Welcome everyone and welcome to this week's F1 Fix Setup Track Guide. We are at Imola this week and a very hot Imola to add. That's not due to the pace that this car goes around here because it is very quick, sub 1 minute 20 lap times around here, but because the track conditions are very hot, the hottest that we've seen this season so far. As always, I run the track conditions and generate the session as per iRacing's schedule. It gives us a time and date, and then the weather is generated from that. And I'm seeing track conditions in the mid to high 30s. And that means we have to rule out the soft tyre, guys. That's my personal opinion. But as you can see, we've got the yellow wall tyre on, which is the medium tyre. And that is the most logical tyre to use in the fixed setup series this week. It's very hard on the tyres this track as well, particularly the front right, so there's also that to take consideration, which is why I've just not even considered the soft tyre. I actually reckon we're going to see for the first time this season the actual use of the hard tyre from many of the participants in this series. I know a number of you have used it just to make sure you've got plenty of life in the tyre in other tracks so far, but logically the hard tyre is probably going to be the tyre of choice in the open setup series this week. So something to play around with probably in your own time, in your own practice sessions, see how the tyres hold up. But yeah, that's why I love this series, because it adds that extra added element of strategy into it, and we may have to rein our lap times in and the way that we drive a little bit to look after that front right a little bit more, to make sure we have some tyre life at the end. And it may suit you in hunting down your fellow drivers at the end of the race. Now, that time I set was a 1:14.7. That was, to me, a very quick lap time. As always, we are running the race setup with full tank of fuel, so that means we're limited to just using the balanced ERS mode. Of course, quali times are always going to be quicker because you've got the quali deployment mode and a much lighter tank of fuel as well. Now, I reined it in here a bit with the way that I drove. I found that going around this track smooth and being close to the sausage curbs but respectful of them at the same time was the quickest way to get around here. Trying to be risky and get as close up to the sausage curbs as I can, and trying to brake a little bit later and eke out as much track as I could, just didn't suit me well around here. Imola is a track that is very easy to overdrive, I've found, and as anyone who has raced an open wheel car at Imola knows, the chicane that is in your screen now and those sausage curbs can kill your race and your car in an instant. So we are going to have a look at this lap, as always, in cockpit view, then a far chase camera angle, and then we're going to analyze it and see how we did it. Consistency is the biggest factor here this week, guys. Of course, outright pace always helps. It does in any car in any series. But this track in particular, and specifically in this car, as many of us have experienced already, keeping it on the black stuff, avoiding the spins, and keeping it on track is what is going to get you the good results this week. So, just before we head into it, I just want to make a quick announcement that I've set up a Clips channel. So, pretty much clue is in the name. It's a channel where I will be uploading much shorter videos, clips up to 2 minutes long of moments from my streams, from my videos, things that I may not even upload to the main channel. Because not every video that I upload, or actually record, is worthy, I think, of the main channel. But some bits are. So, yeah, feel free to go and subscribe to that. Link for it will be in the description below. I really appreciate your support, regardless, on this main channel. But, of course, if you could follow that as well, it'd be much appreciated. But I'm going to stop talking. Let's head into it. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Turn those notifications on and enjoy. So there we go, that was the flying lap. Let's have a look how we put it together. Now, just before we do, as always, want to bring your attention to my brake bias setting. I've got this set at 53, as you can see from the big orange figure there on the dash. Now, this is the lowest, guys, that we can actually reduce the brake bias to now. iRacing has made a couple of adjustments in their hot fix patches, and one of them has been the change in how much we can reduce and increase the brake bias fine adjustment. Not the brake bias itself, that stayed the same. It's still 54 is the lowest we can go to. But the brake bias fine adjustment was how we got brake bias to 51, 52. But now we can no longer do that. 53 is the lowest we can go to. I'm not quite sure if that's as accurate to real life. I'm sure people who are better versed in the mechanics of this car will inform me. Please do in the comments below. I'm pretty sure I've seen them in real life reduce the brake bias to lower than 53 before. But one of the positives is that we can now make this adjustment in the garage, in the setup before we jump into the car, which is handy because it means we don't have to always be flicking the toggle or a button on our steering wheel as soon as we get into the car. But yeah, not quite sure if that's accurate or not. Please feel free to leave a comment in below. I really want to learn if that's right or not. But moving on to the lap itself. So we are on the main straight here, or shall we say, very long right-hander, then left-hander. More like a snake than anything. But as you can see, the reason I've started it here because you will see the only DRS zone that is on this track. So prime overtaking opportunity here at Imola is the start finish straight or wiggly bend, and you will see DRS is now deployed. We keep it tight to the right hand side here to cover as little track as possible, and we do the same as the track starts to move round to the left hand side as well, keeping it tight to the curb. Now we allow the car to drift out to the right hand side, and we're about to head into our braking zone. Now, little bit of a warning to you guys. Imola is a very, very fast track, and this chicane is a tight left-hander on entry with very treacherous sausage curbs on the inside. If you are overtaking on the inside or even on the outside, because the right-hander of this chicane has sausage curbs as well, be careful, because you are going to be carrying an extreme amount of speed, a lot more than the guy you're overtaking. So that means that you have to bring your braking marker back a touch, because if you're on the outside, you're not taking the optimal line into the exit of the chicane, and likewise on the inside, you're going to be very tight to the entry, and it's very easy to turn in early or overshoot the corner, lock up your brakes. So just take that into consideration, guys. Be careful when you're overtaking. Keep an eye out for your braking markers and bring it back a touch. I shouldn't have to say it, but see it all too often. People forget that when you've got DRS open and when you're in someone's draft, you gain a lot more speed than you normally do than without. So let's get back to it. We have got the braking markers here and 150 bald marker. What we're keeping an eye out for in particular is the 100 bald marker, and just as that goes past our vision, we are braking. So in effect, we're braking on around, say, the 90 bald marker, if there was a 90 marker there. Now we're braking in a straight line, and we're going to be shifting all the way down into fourth gear here. Just trail braking a little bit into the corner to get the nose turning in, controlling the front end of the car. And what we want to do is we want to keep these tyres inside this sausage curb, of course, because we don't want to touch these at all, because they will throw the car into a spin and cause floor damage at a best case scenario, as or front wing damage, as you saw with Hamilton at Imola when he tried to stay over the curbs. And we want to be on the red and white curb, and as we hit the curb, that's when we're then applying the throttle again. Now bring this back a touch. If you find that you don't feel confident getting it as close to this curb, that's absolutely fine. I will not be able to keep it as tight to this sausage curb consistently throughout a race distance. I just won't. For one, talent. I don't have enough of it. And two, I'm not brave enough. So it's not worth getting that tight to it and risking it, because those sausage curbs are just, they don't give anything away. It's very, very, very rare that if you hit one of those, especially at the speeds that we're traveling in this car, that you won't pick up some form of damage or you won't spin. So yeah, be very careful with them, guys. If you need to give a little bit of a wider berth, do so. Same thing applies in regards to the angle of attack and throttle input. The only difference will be how much throttle that you carry through this corner and on exit, which we're about to look at. So hit the apex, back on the throttle, off the brake, and then very quickly we're up over to the right hand side into fifth gear. And the reason I've shifted into fifth gear here, guys, is because I've applied throttle 100%. Now, I will admit that this is very brave of myself. Once again, I will not be able to do this consistently throughout a race distance. For a hot lap, a qualifying lap, this is definitely the way. Definitely the way to get your foot down, full throttle. I slightly lift off here because I think I actually took a little bit too much curb because the car unsettled itself. And if I was on full throttle, the rears I thought would just spin up a little bit too much. So I slightly, I mean it's only a little bit, I slightly lifted off and then was back on it as soon as I hit the tarmac. But once again, very similar to the entry of that chicane. You want to be tight to the curb. No shame and no issue in just keeping it tight to the apex. Just means that you'll probably be applying half throttle, 3/4 throttle, rather than going full throttle. And then from here, it's full throttle, trust the downforce, keep it tight to the curb without touching the sausage curb. And then all the way down to the next chicane, which is very different to the first chicane. The first chicane I find is very fast through entry and through exit. This one's very fast through entry, but then the second part of the chicane, second phase, you need to use a lot more brake, and it's very easy to overdrive this chicane and just carry too much speed for the second phase of it, the exit. So what we're keeping an eye out for is the 50 bulb marker. Turn in, and then as we're approaching it, that's when we start to brake. So we start to brake in between the 50 and the apex. So imagine there was a 25, a big 25 on the tarmac. That's where we would be braking, and we're going to carry through here, trail brake in 7th gear, and then shift into 6th as we hit the apex. There we go, or just before we hit the apex. I thought it was a little bit later. And same principle, we want to keep it tight to this sausage curb as we can without actually going over it. But a little bit of a tip for you guys, this sausage curb, or the inside of this yellow sausage curb here, is actually not too bad on the car. It's one of the more favourable sausage curbs around this track. And we can actually, I found, take the inside of this sausage curb. If you go over more to the left, then the center of the car is traveling over the sausage curb, and that's when you cause damage, and that's when you're out of control of the car and you can possibly spin it. But the left wheel can go over the left hand side of this sausage curb, I found. Ideally, don't do it, but it's one of the curbs that is a little bit more favourable to the car. But principle is that we want to be as tight as we can to it so that we are opening up the exit of this chicane. So we shift down into 5th as soon as we come out of that first corner, or first corner of the chicane. and then we're very quickly over to the right hand side, trail braking here because we are controlling the front nose of the car to get the front end turning in. Same thing, right wheels are up on the red and white curb, keeping it as tight to the sausage curb so that we can. And then I am not on full throttle as quickly as I was on the last corner. On the last corner, as you can see, I was on full throttle, or getting on the throttle, before I was at the exit of the corner. Now I'm waiting until I get off of the curb to start applying the throttle, because you can see there's quite a little bit of an unsettlement of the car here, bouncing up and down. And it's very, very easy, guys. If you've raced this track before in any other car, it's very easy to carry too much speed through this corner and run out of track. Very, very easy. And look, there's no room for error here. It's just gravel. It's grass and gravel, and so many people end up in this wall. This has claimed a lot of victims over its time in iRacing, so be careful, guys. Also, another thing to take a note of is that iRacing has adjusted its rules on track limits around Imola. It is now the case, pretty much on every single one of these runoff curbs, that the outside of the red and white curb is the track limits. It is no longer the case that this green AstroTurf indicates the track limits. Now, I know that wasn't the case at every corner, but that is the set rule around every single one of these types of corners. You can actually see it in the rules. They haven't displayed any pictures. They've just, simple as, on corner exit, the edge of the red and white curbing, and that is the case for every single one of the corners that has one of these runoffs. So that's another reason why, specifically in your hot laps, to just be careful of making sure you apply enough brake and you're faster on the exit than carrying the outright speed through the entry of the chicane, because it's so easy to just overdrive it and run out of track. So you do want to use this runoff, but of course we want to make sure that the tyres are staying on the red and white curb. We're very quickly back over to the right hand side, and we're keeping an eye on the 50 ball marker. In particular, the end of this concrete runoff here, where it meets the track, where it diagonally points into the track, and where the green stuff starts to run perpendicular alongside it. You can see there, we start to apply the throttle. We're making sure we brake in a straight line as well. Shifting down into third gear. Now, a turning point, if you want a turning point, you should always be looking at the apex anyway. But our turning point is, I mean, it's difficult because I don't really look at anything on the right hand side, but I know some people do. Our turning point is really when the gravel on the right hand side starts to go past us. That's when we start to turn in. But you should always be looking into and through the apex, guys. That's when you should start turning in. Of course, practice makes perfect. Now, here we're going to be trail braking a little bit into third gear. And we're going to short shift. I don't know if you saw that there, guys. We're going to short shift into fourth gear. Now, this is a bit of a late apex, this hairpin. You don't want to be hitting the apex too early, because you'll just, as soon as you get on the throttle, you'll be, you're too shallow and you'll just run out of track on exit, and you'll have to lift off or apply the brake. So it's a bit of a late apex. But you can see there I've shifted into fourth, and as I've got halfway round, and as the car is now pointing straight along the track and pointing against the wall, that's when I then start to apply the throttle. Now, I'm still being careful here because, as we know, this car's got a lot of torque. It's very easy to spin this car even in fourth gear. So I'm slowly applying the throttle, unwinding the steering wheel, and then once the car pretty much is thereabouts pointing up the track, up the hill, that's when I apply full throttle, because I've got the rear traction and I can power up this hill. It's essential to short shift into fourth gear here, guys. I tried a number of times going through here in third gear. You just can't get the throttle down. You just spin up the rears and you spin the car. So if you do somehow manage to dive up the inside here and you're quite shallow, very, very shallow into this corner and tight into it, yes, you will want to be in third gear to make sure that you get the car turning round the corner. But when you get out of the corner, you will want to short shift into fourth gear, just to ensure that you know you can stamp your foot down on that throttle and get that drive up the hill. Now, be careful, guys, of this AstroTurf on the right hand side. What you want to be doing ideally is to keep your right wheels on this red and white curb, because there is not a lot of traction at all on this AstroTurf. I tested it even in fourth gear, running a little bit wide. So if you do carry too much speed and you end up on this green AstroTurf on the right hand side, the little runoff, be careful even applying throttle in fourth gear, because the rears do spin up and it is possible to crash. This is where, I mean, the chicanes are going to have enough crashes as it is, but this is a corner where you're going to see a lot of people spin the car. So be careful coming around this corner. Respect the yellow flags, guys. Can't say that enough. If you're approaching this corner and there's a yellow flag, it's because there's a spinner and you don't know where they are. Just lift off the throttle until you come around the corner and you can actually see where they are, because then you've got plenty of time to react, and you're also then not gonna hit that car and cause a pile up for the people who are following you as well. So play it on, up the hill now, full throttle, working our way through the gears, up into 7th. And then what we're keeping an eye out for is the 50 ball marker. We're over to the right hand side and we've got a very fast left-hander. Now this corner is the corner that I would say is most punishable to your front right tyre. So it is a corner that throughout the duration of the race is probably worth lifting a little bit earlier, braking a little bit earlier, and just taking a less amount of speed through here to just protect that front right. Now what we're keeping an eye out for, as you see, the 50 has gone past our vision now, and we're lucky enough that during this nice sunny day that the conditions have provided for us, we have some shadows from some trees here. Now you'll see that these shadows pretty much start just before the red and white curb starts on the left hand side. This is our braking marker, as you can see. So there may be a case, of course, where it's cloudy and the sun goes behind the clouds and you cannot see these shadows. So you want to make sure that you're braking before, slightly before you reach this red and white curb on the left hand side. As you can see, that's when we start to apply the brake. And we turn in as we see the apex. And the key here, guys, is to not carry too much speed through the corner. I would say 99% of people here, they carry too much speed, and it's not that they don't carry enough speed. So we trail brake quite a way through here. So we shift down into 6th just before we hit the apex. That naturally slows the car up, and then we're trail braking. Now this car has a lot of downfalls, and yes, we could get on full throttle through here and get it round the corner, but we would run out of track. Now, as I said at the start, or shortly ago, iRacing has changed the track limits here. It used to be that the green AstroTurf on the outside was the track limits. It was very generous really, but now it's more consistent with how they enforce it in F1. This was the corner where everyone's time was getting removed because they went outside track limits here. Particularly Lando Norris's brilliant time that would have put him P2 behind Hamilton, but unfortunately he went wide here, or ever so slightly, and his time got removed. So as we get round the corner, pretty much all the way round, we're nearly like all the way round the corner. We're then back on full throttle, And what we're doing is we're making sure that our wheels stay inside this curb. Inside. Now this curb is a little bit raised and it actually does kind of suck the underfloor of the car into itself. And you can see there, back on track, full throttle. It's a great corner to drive, but you just have to rein. It's a corner that you just have to rein it in a little bit because it's very easy to get an off track, and of course it's very punishable on your front right hand tire. So we now come down to Acqua Minerale. It's a very famous couple of sets of corners here. I think I've said that right. I'm sorry if I've butchered it entirely. But we come down to a very fast right-hander into a hard braking zone. Very easy to carry too much speed once again and lock up the tyres here. You'll see a lot of people I reckon you'll see a few people here this week apply too much brake and just lose the back end on their own. I've personally done that in F3 before. So we are full throttle. This is where you need to be brave here, guys. Full throttle into the apex. We can get two wheels over the curb, but you can see there, as we hit the curb, that's where we hit a brake. Now, I would admit I did go faster through here by braking a little bit later. I did brake a couple of times around here and shift it all the way down into third gear, and then I was very quickly back up into fourth gear as I went through the corner. But it was very, very inconsistent. It was difficult to do that lap after lap. I would say it is of course the quickest way to do it. So during a hot lap, i.e. qualifying, where you have got the ERS mode and you have got lighter fuel, you will want to be braking once you get past that curb or that apex and you're on the black stuff here. In this instance, of course, we've got race fuel and we've got balanced ERS mode, so our braking distances are pulled back a little bit. And as I said, going around this track smooth and kind of easy in essence, reining it in a bit, I actually went quicker. So as we get to that curb, that's when we start applying the brake, and it's important here, guys, that you try and point the car so that you're braking in a straight line. Now, what I mean by that is that you're not braking in a straight line in regards to perpendicular to the track. Your front wheels and your rear wheels are relatively straight when braking. So you can see here, while I have got some steering input, my steering input isn't at 90 degrees. So it's very easy to turn in very sharply here and then brake, and then that's when you lose the rear tyres because your wheels aren't aligned with each other, or I know they're not entirely aligned, but they're quite close. So we're braking, pointing the car over to the left-hand side, and then we're going to shift down into fourth gear, use the curb, and we're opening up the right-hander. And of course, see those sausage curbs? They are very treacherous here, very easy to clip. Now, I actually gave them a bit of a wide berth here. I could have been a bit closer. Believe it or not, it doesn't look like it, but I could have been. But once again, as per the chicanes, no shame in giving these a wide berth and keeping it tight to the curb, to the apex. And as you get to the corner, as you can see, I start to apply the throttle. Now, I'm not on full throttle yet because I had a couple of instances here where I tried full throttle on exit around about this point, and as you can see from my steering, the wheels aren't aligned and I just lost the rear of the car. So I'm slowly, as we get up here, applying the throttle, making use of the runoff. Now, be careful, as per iRacing's track limits, as we've stated already, we want our wheels to be on the inside of this curb. Very easy to get the wheels on the inside of this red and white curb here. And then as we get the steering straight, as you can see, I'm fighting the wheel a little bit with the oversteer. We're on full throttle, pointing the car straight back up the track. And then we head down into the chicane. Now, this chicane, it can be an overtaking opportunity, but you really have to make sure you make it stick and that you've got a good run on them. It is not a chicane to be sending one on the inside, because you'll just cause a pile up. And the way that this chicane is, where it's very raised with the curbs, it's not a chicane that you can be making big dives down. It's just not. So we want to keep an eye out for the 50 ball marker on the left hand side, braking just before it in a straight line, and we're shifting down into 4th gear. Now we start to turn in just as we go under the bridge. Well, yeah, a little bridge with some lights on. That's what we want to start turning in. Now, we want to be keeping our right wheels just on the inside of this black and orangey curb here. It's a nasty curb and it's a nasty chicane. And you can see I'm trail braking, controlling the car all the way through here. I will just jump to far chase, and you can see here from a better angle how my wheels are on that curb. Then very quickly, as we come off that curb, that's when I'm off the brake and I'm hovering over the throttle, as you can see, eager to get on it. I just allow the car, the natural movement of the car, through the chicane. Once again, getting the wheels on the inside of this yellow curb. If you go over here, you're going to take too much curb. You're going to be, one, at a chance of damage and spinning the car and causing a crash. And you'll also get a 1x and possibly a slowdown as well. So be careful. As you can see there, look, just as we rewind it back, how close my wheels are to the inside of this white line. The white line here is actually the track limits, so have to be careful. And then as we get off the chicane, I'm starting to apply the throttle easily. And then making sure that I don't run outside here. So you can see I'm very, very close to getting a 1x here. Now this corner is very treacherous in that if you do travel too far over, you will get a slowdown, which is very painful. Any slowdown is painful, particularly here, because it's a very fast run down to the next couple of corners. So be careful, guys, of not carrying too much speed through here. As I said, it's very easy to overdrive this track. But what 4th gear allows us to do, guys, now you may be thinking, surely traveling through 3rd gear there is much better. It isn't, because it's just too scary. In 3rd gear, you just can't get on the throttle as early as you want, and you have to be so hesitant on it because of how much torque this car has, and you'll just spin the car. So you definitely want to be going through there in 4th gear. Of course, if you really need to slow the car down, shift down into 3rd, but you want to be exiting that chicane in 4th gear because it allows you to get the traction, get on full throttle, and power away from that chicane. And then it's a nice run down to the last couple of corners. Full throttle, covering as little track as possible on the left hand side, moving it over to the right hand side, tight to the apex. And then we are keeping an eye out for the 50 ball marker. Now, the reason we're keeping an eye out for the 50 ball marker is because, one, the 100 ball marker's gone behind us. We're not keeping an eye out for that. And we're braking on what I would say is an imaginary 75 ball marker. Now, once again, similar to Aqua Minerale, you can brake later here, especially with the qualifying setup and in a race setup as well. But it was just too inconsistent for me. I was getting lockups, and I know that I wouldn't be able to do that in a race over a race distance. So braking a little bit earlier of the 50 helped. Down into fourth gear, then third, trail braking through, tight to the apex. You can get 2 wheels up over here, and then as we get off the apex, into third gear, using the runoff. Once again, very, very close to getting a 1x here. I'm not entirely sure how we got away with it. Very, very fine margins. And then I quickly shift up into fourth gear here. Now, I did try staying in third and going through here, which is doable and it's safe to do so, but it wasn't quick enough. So shifting up into fourth, because you get very close to the rev limiter in third gear. Applying a little bit of brake, as you could see, just before we got into the corner. And then as we get to the corner, this is the key here to getting a good exit. This is probably the most important corner on the whole track, because this sets up your prime overtaking opportunity down the back straight, DRS mode, and defending or attacking into the first corner. As you can see, just a little bit of brake was applied just to control the front nose, and then we're getting on the throttle as we get to the apex, well, before we get to the apex even. 2 tyres up over the curb, and then down on full throttle, making use of the runoff here. Doesn't unsettle the car too much. And then it is all the way down, easy, DRS activated, covering as little track as you can, tight to the barrier, and across the line. And there we go, guys. That is a lap around Imola. I hope that helps you out here this week. As I said, it's all well and good being fast here, but you need to be respectful of those sausage curbs. Keep it tight to the apexes, but if you don't feel confident enough, just stay away from those sausage curbs altogether and keep it on the black stuff, and you will have good results here this week. I can guarantee it. So yeah, hope that helps, guys. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications on, and see you for the next one. Bye.